It's amazing how many times Court and I say, "Are the mics on?"
Yeah, you got to
because we
gotta be careful.
we have a lot of stories. Gary Stromberg has joined us, and Gary, how are you?
I'm doing good, Pat.
You know, Gary's a friend of mine for
Too long.
too long. When you say too long, it's over 2 decades.
Right. Much more than 2 decades.
Gary still does in many ways, but he used to really run this town. As Gibson Stromberg, a public relations firm, represented Muhammad Ali. I'm just going to read it because Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Muhammad Ali, Barbra Streisand, boys, 2 men. You know that's how you say that, right? Boys.
Boys, 2 old men now.
Exactly. Ray Charles. Ray Charles owes me $100, and I'll tell you,
Good luck.
we bet on the Super Bowl, and
But how would he know what? I mean, you could just
give him a 20. He died, so I tried to get the 100 from Jamie Foxx after he won the Oscar.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And here they come for the 100.
Yeah.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Earth, Wind and Fire, Elton John, Three Dog Night, The Doors. What was that like?
It's one of my first clients. The Doors.
What were they like when they walked in?
Well, they weren't the Doors yet.
Yeah.
They were the aspiring Doors.
Right.
They were like the dog door.
Most groups are the aspiring Doors.
Yes, I was going to say.
They weren't there yet.
Now that's a band, by the way.
Exactly.
The Doors.
But they didn't have a bass player.
Well, it didn't matter.
I know, but I mean, it's a band.
It's still a band.
And then Car Wash, you produced.
I produced.
And basically, Car Wash was one of the first movies that was really an advertisement for an album.
A soundtrack.
A soundtrack.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yep. It's the first movie, I think, totally shot to the recorded music. It was already done. And we shot the movie to the music.
It's brilliant.
What a great,
Right?
and a great movie too. I mean, everybody in that
Thank
was
you.
amazing.
Yeah.
And Gary used to have an office on Sunset Boulevard that, when you talk about everything all the time,
Yeah.
that was Gary's office.
Where on Sunset? I love.
Right where the old world was. Remember
Oh,
the old
yeah,
world?
yeah,
Right next
yeah.
door, the old
Yeah.
world upstairs.
Oh, see, those are the great. Those are
Right
those
across
great.
the street from Tower Records.
That's why we're all sober now.
Yeah.
I had
Oh,
an account at Tower Records. I'd just go in there, take records, and they would bill me.
Right.
In the old days where you had accounts, I had
Uh-huh.
an account at Turner's Liquor and at Tower Records. And
Gil
Tower
Turner's
Records-
Liquor right on the
Gil
corner
Turner.
there.
I just
Everybody
want to-
knows that.
yeah.
You'd have an account, and you just go in there, take, and they just write it up, and they send you the bill at the end of the month. I wasn't real good at paying my bills.
Well, no, why would you be?
Of course. And I got it from Tower Records, said, unless you pay up in full by, and they gave me
Right.
the date, your picture is going up on our billboard.
Unpaid. Right. And then,
That was the threat.
not surprisingly, Gary is now involved in recovery, and thankfully, right. And he's sober. I'm sober. Court's sober. Are you today?
today I am. Today
Okay.
we'll see.
And I'm sober.
It's not
Did
over
I
yet.
say that
It's
already?
not over yet. but-
And wrote this book called The Harder They Fall. Now, you always read about celebrities falling, but you never read about how they got back up. You know?
Or the ones that have been back up for a while. That was really the point of the book. Not
Right.
just somebody who just got on the bandwagon.
Right.
But all those people in that book had been sober at least 10 years.
Well, that's why I'm not in it.
And that's, yes.
Richard Pryor. And he interviews all these people in here.
Except
You know?
for Richard. Richard died before the book.
I had the last interview with him.
Wow.
And you know
And
what
you
he
didn't
said?
ask him about Gary's book. You didn't.
No,
didn't-
we talked a lot. The last thing he said to me was, and he could barely talk. I'm not going to impersonate the way he talked because he had
Yeah.
problems. But he said, his wife said, he's got one thing to say to you. And he pulls my ear close and he goes, no more cocaine. Richard was a friend of mine for a long time, and he died tragically. Grace Slick, did you talk to her?
Of course, yeah.
Tell me about her.
Well, Grace, she is sober. She's not what I would call recovered or into sobriety.
Right.
She's just abstinent. She knows she can't use anymore. She told me a great story, though. I think I've told you this before. Grace Slick was born into a very wealthy family in San Francisco. Her maiden name was Wing, Grace Wing. They were Republican conservatives,
I like
wealthy.
it.
Why not?
Yeah,
Better
yeah.
name,
Yeah, it was
actually.
totally. You would never suspect that. And when she graduated high school, her family said to her, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to get as far away from you as I possibly can."
Like most
so she
kids.
went to this small college called Fitch College in
Now,
New York, upstate New
Did they
York.
pay for her college? Student?
So they-
she
oh, yeah,
didn't
they're
get
glad-
that far away.
Well,
Not when the bills came, no.
Yeah.
But she only lasted there a year. She said, "This isn't for me," and she
Yeah.
began hitchhiking back across the country, and where she got into her whole rock and roll persona. But the story that I'm going to tell you is that a year later, she got a letter in the mail from Tricia Nixon. President
Whoa.
Nixon's
Yeah.
daughter,
Tricky Dick.
who also went to Fitch.
Okay.
When she graduated, she had the school give them a list of everybody that had gone to that school.
Right.
And she sent out an invitation inviting them all to a reception at the White House. She was going to have this reception for all the Fitch attendees. So she didn't know that Grace
What a
Wing
little
was
rich
now...
bitch, you know?
Grace Wing.
She didn't know that Grace Wing was Grace Slick, and now the lead singer in the Jefferson Airplane, who she obviously we never would have invited.
Right.
Grace first act upon receiving this invitation was to call her then best friend Abby Hoffman,
Oh God.
who Pat knows. I don't know
I
if
know
you're old
Abby.
enough
I knew
to.
Abby well.
I know who Abby Hoffman. Yeah.
Okay, so Abby Hoffman was one of
I
the great
actually know him.
radicals,
Absolutely. I mean, he's the one who led
the Chicago Seven.
Yeah.
But also led the speech on the for the Vietnam the anti-Vietnam rally.
Well, he was anti-everything at that
Yeah,
time.
but I
Right.
mean, but when they had the go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
anyway, she said, "Guess what? We're going to the White House." So the two of them devised.
She brings Abby Hoffman.
She not listen to the story. So two of them devised this plan wherein they are going to dose the president of the United States with LSD. That's the idea they came up with. And Grace
I
said,
love this.
and this is the story she told me, that she said, I had been to many receptions like this from my family. I knew how these things were run. She said, I know there'd be a reception line. He'd be standing there. There would be a drink or a
Right.
beverage nearby. And when we got up to him, I'd just drop the LSD into his drink, and we'd be gone. So the two of
That's
them
why we went
planned,
to Cambodia.
they take this blood vow. This is, we're going to do this no matter what. He goes out and rents a tux. She gets a dress. The day arrives. They are now in the line, the reception line. It's exactly as she had predicted. He's standing there in this reception line. Right on the table alongside of him is a cup of tea. She's got the LSD in her hand. They're walking through the line. They're both like so excited. They can't believe what they're going to do. And two cops, security guys, walk up behind her, each grab an elbow, and they remove her from the line. And they say to her, listen, we know who you are, and we think you're a threat to our president. And they escort her out of the White House. She said what they didn't know is they didn't recognize Abby Hoffman, who was intent on killing everybody. But he didn't have the LSD. She did.
Oh, why didn't they have
Darn
a
it.
backup tab?
Plan, I know they didn't have
You gotta
a plan.
have a backup tab.
Have a backup.
Everybody knows you
I
have
wonder
a
if it was
backup
window pane or
dose.
was it
don't
was it
know.
Leary's?
So-
I've done acid with Leary.
So Nixon came
Ooh.
that close to having his first LSD experience. So here's a
You might have been better off, to be honest with you.
No
We don't.
kidding.
By the way, we're not endorsing LSD right now. But
So here's an
Or
aside.
Richard Nixon.
exactly.
Here's an aside to that story. She told me that it was known in the White House that Nixon was an insomniac who was often seen walking around the
Talking to the
talking
pictures.
to the portraits
Yeah.
of dead presidents. So she said that he would come onto this acid, and the staff would say, well, there goes just being Richard again. They would never would have known that he was tripping.
But what if he was like trying to like make out with George Washington's picture?
Well, who knows?
Oh.
This is what
We
Court
missed
does
it.
over at the Comedy Club.
Yeah.
Right? All the pictures. Court McCowan is here, and apparently my co-host the last 2 weeks, and Gary Stromberg, who wrote The Harder They Fall. What was the best thing about this book? And when you look at the people in the back, it really is, Doc Ellis, the great baseball player who actually pitched a no-hitter on acid.
That's
right?
one of my other favorite stories.
Yeah.
Do
Tell
you
us
have
that
time
story.
to- Do we have time?
We have all kinds of time.
This is a great story. Doc Ellis was, as many know, was a very successful pitcher for both the New York Yankees and the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was the first guy to ever wear curlers on his hair underneath his baseball hat. He was a pretty crazy character. He was pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the late 70s, and it was the day off. And they were in Los Angeles, and he and his girlfriend decided they would take an acid trip. They were in this hotel
On his
and-
day off,
On his
thinking,
day off,
Yeah,
Not
it's
gonna
your
do
day
that.
off. Doesn't
So-
everybody do that
right.
on their day off?
So they drop
Okay.
acid. It's like 11 in the morning, and she's thumbing through the sports page of the paper,
Yeah.
waiting for this drug to come on. And she said, "Look, Doc, it says you're pitching today." He had mistaken in his calendar. He thought he was pitching tomorrow. He was pitching today, but not only was he pitching today, they were in San Diego. The team was in San Diego. He was in Los Angeles. So the two of them ran to the airport. They get on an airplane. They fly to San Diego. They get there. It's a day-night doubleheader, and he's pitching the first game, 1 o'clock. He says, now the acid is totally taken over. He's in the locker room getting dressed, and he's tripping. He goes out on the mound, and he said, here's my favorite quote. He said, sometimes I could see the catcher, sometimes I couldn't. And he's throwing 90-mile-an-hour fastballs at a catcher he can't see.
Can you imagine like how like he's just massaging that ball? He's going, oh.
He
that
told
feels
me
good."
that the catcher's mitt looked like a like a city. How big it was.
Now
you know,
there's
the
a
target.
video. Well, two things that I tell you.
Well, he
about
did.
this.
I think he has a special.
Yes.
They did a 30 for
Doc-
30 on him,
Yes.
Right.
and he
Yes,
did a
that
thing
story.
where he talks about doing acid, pitching
Right.
on acid, and I could barely function on acid, much less.
First of all, once again, we are not suggesting to do acid.
We're not condoning
And
it.
it's the old thing your parents would tell you. Drugs were different back then. Sure they were. We'll be back in a minute.